friends, and ended with a tragedy no one expected. Today, we're looking into a case that began with a move between best friends and ended with a tragedy no one expected. Two young women, inseparable for years, started a new chapter under the same roof. But within weeks, one stopped answering texts, missed work, and disappeared entirely. What seemed like a simple roommate dispute soon revealed a pattern of obsession, control, and something far darker. What detectives uncovered inside that apartment changed everything. In early August 2024, Tiara Mills, a 24-year-old aspiring social worker, relocated to Jacksonville's South Side, settling into apartment 3C at the Sunrise Palms complex. The apartment belonged to her close friend Camilla West, 26, who had extended the invitation after Tiara ended a long-term relationship. The two women had known each other since high school. On social media, they presented themselves as chosen family, often referring to one another as sisters without blood. Tiara had recently moved out of her parents' home on the north side of Jacksonville. Her mother, Shonda Mills, worked at a local elementary school. Her father, Darius, was a city maintenance worker. They were a working-class couple who had raised Tiara as their only child. She was known in her community as gentle, creative, and ambitious. Her interest in social work had developed during her volunteer shifts at a local shelter. That summer, she had been preparing transfer documents to enroll at Florida A&M University. Her plans included earning a degree and eventually opening a nonprofit organization. Her move to Sunrise Palms was meant to be temporary, an opportunity to save money, gain independence, and focus on her education. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Shonda had helped her pack. She remembered hugging her daughter goodbye outside the complex, offering advice, and watching as Tiara waved from the breezeway steps. For the first 3 weeks, everything appeared normal. Tiara texted daily. She video called her parents in the evenings and continued showing up to work at a local youth counseling center. But on August 23rd, Shonda noticed she hadn't heard from her daughter since the previous morning. Calls went unanswered. Messages remained unread. At first, Shonda thought Tiara might be overwhelmed or preoccupied. But by the following afternoon, concern turned into fear. On August 25th, Shonda and Darius drove to Sunrise Palms. Camilla West answered the door. She appeared tense and disheveled. According to Shonda's later statement to investigators, Camilla claimed that Tiara had left the apartment 2 nights earlier to meet someone she had recently connected with online. She said Tiara packed a bag and left in a hurry, allegedly saying she needed space. Camilla insisted she hadn't seen or heard from her since. The explanation struck Shonda as incomplete. Tiara never went anywhere without telling someone. Her phone was powered off, which was uncharacteristic. Her employer confirmed she hadn't shown up for work. A cousin reported receiving a private message from Tiara days earlier that read, "Something doesn't feel right here anymore." There were no immediate signs of foul play. The apartment was organized, even spotless. The shared bedroom showed no visible damage, and there was no sign of a struggle. Tiara's closet contained fewer clothes, suggesting she may have taken some with her. Despite growing unease, there was little police could act on. A formal missing persons report was filed, but the case remained inactive during the initial 72 hours. On August 28th, a neighbor living directly above apartment 3C contacted building management. They reported a strong odor coming from the balcony directly below theirs. It had intensified over several days. Property staff contacted the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Officers arrived that evening. On the balcony of Camilla West's apartment, concealed inside a large plastic storage bin wedged between patio chairs and pool flotation devices, officers made a disturbing discovery. The container had been sealed with layers of duct tape. When it was opened, the source of the odor became clear. Inside was a human body, partially wrapped in a blanket. It had entered an advanced state of decomposition. Officers noted visible bruising on the wrists and discoloration around the face and neck. Camilla West, who was present in the apartment during the discovery, was detained on site for questioning. When asked to identify the victim, she broke into sobs. "I didn't do anything," she told officers. "I didn't put her there." The body was removed and transferred to the Duval County Medical Examiner's office. Identification was later confirmed through dental records and tattoos. The deceased was Tiara Mills. Cause of death was strangulation.
Why would you have to say you didn't put her there? Did they ask you that?
The homicide investigation began immediately. The official autopsy, performed by the Duval County Medical Examiner's office, revealed signs of strangulation. Tiara's hyoid bone was fractured. There were deep ligature marks along her neck. Her lips were cyanotic. Her hands showed extensive bruising around the wrists, consistent with restraint. Defensive wounds on her arms and knees suggested that she had resisted. The time of death was placed around the night of August 22nd, matching the day she last had contact with anyone. Initial interviews with Camilla West produced a number of contradictions. Her original account stated that Tiara had left on her own to meet someone and had not returned. Later, she said Tiara had been drinking heavily and became unresponsive. In a third version, Camilla claimed they had an argument and she had woken up to find Tiara gone. At no point did she mention violence. However, the forensic evidence pointed to a violent death. Toxicology reports showed no alcohol or sedatives in Tiara's system. She had not passed away in her sleep. At the Mills residence, the official notification came in the early hours of August 29th. According to relatives present, Shonda Mills collapsed upon hearing the words. Darius Mills reportedly caught her before she hit the porch floor. The family had left voicemails on Tiara's phone every morning, believing she might call back. That hope ended with confirmation of the body's identity. Inside Tiara's childhood bedroom, investigators found a shelf full of sociology books and a stack of handwritten journals. She had been documenting her plans to transfer to Florida A&M University. A nearly complete application was discovered in her backpack, unsigned but ready to send. It was dated August 19th, just 3 days before her death. Crime scene technicians returned to the apartment to conduct a more thorough sweep. On the balcony, beneath the bin, they found faint, smeared fingerprints. Some belonged to Camilla West. In the living room, investigators opened a cracked laundry basket. Inside, they located a blood-stained pillowcase. In the bathroom, beneath the sink, they recovered a pair of latex gloves and a bottle of concentrated bleach. The condition of the apartment, previously described by responding officers as overly clean, now appeared deliberate. Items were missing from the usual cleaning cabinet. Surfaces had been recently scrubbed. When investigators examined Camilla's cell phone, they recovered a search history that included how to report a missing person, body in storage, how long before a body smells, and will smell go away with vinegar. The
she wanted to kill Shotty. She wanted to kill her.
Mass decomposition. There was no call to emergency services placed on the night of August 22nd. You can't call everybody your partner, your sister, none of that. No messages had been sent from Camilla's phone to any friend or family member about Tiara's condition. Her phone had remained active throughout that night and into the early morning hours. At this stage, investigators classified the case as a homicide. Camilla West was charged with concealment of a human body and held without bond pending further investigation. Formal murder charges had not yet been filed. However, the physical evidence contradicted every version of events Camilla had offered. The autopsy conducted by the Duval County Medical Examiner confirmed what investigators had already begun to suspect. Tiara Mills did not die quietly. Her body bore signs of prolonged struggle.
So she tried to fight back.
Along her forearms were defensive wounds, scratches, bruises, and contusions, indicative of an attempt to shield herself. Her ribs showed signs of blunt trauma. Her knees were scraped, as if from impact against flooring during a fall or restraint. These injuries, combined with deep ligature marks and a fractured hyoid bone, left no doubt she had been strangled during a physical confrontation.
Yeah.
More telling still was the forensic evidence found beneath Tiara's fingernails. Technicians recovered trace DNA that matched Camilla West. The sample was consistent with skin cells likely deposited during a struggle. When investigators questioned Camilla about visible scratches on her own forearm, she initially claimed not to remember how she got them. In a follow-up interview, she referred vaguely to working outside and grabbing some rough boxes. At no point did she acknowledge any altercation with Tiara.
People be so jealous on undercover jealousy, undercover pressure.
In one version, she said Tiara had stormed out after an argument. In another, she claimed she had fallen asleep and awoke to find the apartment empty. The story she repeated most frequently, that Tiara left voluntarily to meet someone, no longer aligned with the physical or digital evidence.
Yeah.
At this stage in the investigation, detectives concluded that Camilla's accounts were unreliable. The forensic team expanded their search beyond the apartment. A warrant was issued for access to Tiara's iCloud account, which she had regularly used to back up personal data. Within it, analysts found a series of voice memos recorded during the weeks leading up to her death. One entry, dated August 17th, stood out.
Oh, dated on your birthday,
In a quiet, tremulous voice, Tiara said, "She's starting to watch everything I do. If something happens to me, please look here." The file was timestamped and unedited. Also retrieved were screenshots of text conversations with friends, in which Tiara described Camilla as increasingly controlling. One message to a former classmate read, "She acts like she owns my time. I'm starting to feel boxed in." Another, sent just 3 days before her death, stated, "She wants me to only need her. It's not healthy."
She didn't want her to have no other damn friends.
A deteriorating relationship
That's
marked by
crazy.
emotional manipulation and possessiveness. Investigators reached out to residents of the Sunrise Palms complex. A woman who lived in Unit 3E, adjacent to Camilla and Tiara's apartment, reported hearing a loud argument the night Tiara was last seen. It was one voice shouting, really loud, and another voice crying, she said.
So why the fuck y'all didn't call the cops?
At once. She did not report the incident at the time, assuming it was a domestic dispute that had resolved itself. Taken together, the autopsy results, digital records, witness testimony, and crime scene findings formed a cohesive narrative. Detectives presented their evidence to the state attorney's office. On September 2nd, 2024, formal charges were filed against Camilla West, second-degree murder, unlawful concealment of a human body, and obstruction of a criminal investigation.
Oh, yeah.
Bail was denied.
Good.
Camilla entered a plea of not guilty. Through her public defender, she referred to Tiara's death as a tragic accident. The Mills family held a private funeral service for Tiara on September 6th. The ceremony was attended by relatives, former classmates, co-workers, and members of the church where Tiara had volunteered. Her parents, Shonda and Darius, walked silently behind the casket. No public statement was given on that day. Attendees recalled a framed childhood photo resting atop the closed casket, showing Tiara at age 9, smiling in a school uniform, holding a book. A police escort accompanied the procession from the funeral home to the burial site at Evergreen Cemetery. Members of the victim advocacy team with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office were present to provide logistical and emotional support. As part of standard post-charging protocol, they also helped Shonda and Darius draft a victim impact statement in preparation for the coming trial. Behind the scenes, prosecutors began organizing the growing body of digital and forensic evidence into a comprehensive timeline. The foundation of the case was strong, a clear motive rooted in emotional dependency, a forensic trail pointing to physical violence, and a documented attempt to cover up the crime. What remained was to prove intent, and whether Camilla West's actions before and after Tiara's death constituted premeditated behavior or impulsive escalation.
But
By
she was
mid-September
researching
2024,
shit.
the prosecution
This
had begun
is
assembling a
premeditated. She
detailed
was
timeline of
researching.
Tiara Mills' final night. With assistance from digital forensic analysts and telecommunications data, they reconstructed the key window between 10:30 p.m. and dawn on August 22nd. That window would form the backbone of their case. The last known activity from Tiara's phone occurred at 10:41 p.m. when she sent a short message to a friend, still awake. Things are weird. The recipient later told investigators that Tiara had been vague for days, but increasingly uneasy. The message was interpreted as a quiet signal of distress.
I'm tired.
By 12 a.m., her device was offline. It was never turned on again. Camilla West's phone, in contrast, remained powered and active throughout the night. Her screen activity showed no long idle periods. At 2:17 a.m., her device logged a series of internet searches that would later become central to the prosecution's argument. Among the phrases entered into the browser were, "How long does it take for a body to smell? What does a dead body smell like? And can vinegar cover smell of decay?" These searches took place less than 4 hours after Tiara's last message. At 7:32 a.m. the next morning, Camilla sent a message to her supervisor at a local pharmacy. She claimed to be feeling unwell and requested the day off. Investigators included this message in their profile of post-crime behavior. That same morning, building management reported seeing Camilla exiting the back stairwell carrying a plastic bag and a bleach container.
That was that girl body and her cleaning up that mess.
Their review of digital evidence, they uncovered additional inconsistencies. Surveillance footage retrieved from the side lot of the Sunrise Palms complex showed a person matching Camilla's physical build exiting the building at approximately 3:12 a.m. She appeared to be wheeling a large laundry bin down the walkway. The bin was covered with a dark towel. There was no corresponding footage of Tiara exiting the unit at any point that night, or any night afterward. Investigators believe this act was an attempt to relocate or conceal the body before ultimately returning it to the balcony. Whether Camilla failed to find an alternate disposal site or changed her mind remains unclear. But the footage, in combination with her internet history, showed an awareness of the body's presence and efforts to manage the consequences. Banking records also became part of the timeline. On August 23rd, Camilla withdrew $600 in cash from a joint vacation savings account she and Tiara had opened the previous year. The account was intended for a trip to New Orleans. Tiara's mother confirmed that her daughter had still been adding money to the fund in July. Camilla's withdrawal occurred the day after Tiara's presumed death. No vacation was planned. The money was not spent. When asked about the withdrawal, Camilla offered no explanation. In reviewing Camilla's social media activity, detectives noted that she had deleted nearly all photos featuring Tiara.
Wow.
The exception was a heavily filtered image uploaded
but that's
to
your
her
friend.
Instagram
You didn't
story
do it.
on August 26th. The photo, a candid shot of Tiara taken weeks earlier, was paired with the caption, "Always watching over me." Investigators flagged this post as manipulative in tone, potentially reflecting an attempt to control the narrative or deflect suspicion. At the time of the post, Tiara's death had not yet been publicly confirmed.
Right.
Psychological evaluations, ordered by the court after Camilla's arrest, revealed a clinical pattern. A licensed forensic psychologist diagnosed traits consistent with dependent personality disorder and what was described as pathological attachment. The evaluation described Camilla as emotionally enmeshed with the victim to a degree that impaired independent functioning. Friends of both women told investigators that Camilla had become visibly agitated whenever Tiara spent time with others. One former co-worker of Camilla described her as clingy, insecure, and suspicious of anyone who got close to Tiara. Another recalled her saying, "She's all I've got." Following the evaluation, Camilla remained in custody without bond at Duval County Jail. In the weeks after her indictment, correctional officers intercepted a number of handwritten letters she attempted to send from her cell. The letters, addressed to no clear recipient, contained language the prosecution later described as indicative of emotional instability and possessive delusion. One letter read, "She was slipping away from me. I couldn't let her abandon me like the others did." Prosecutors interpreted the contents of these letters as evidence of a motive rooted in abandonment fear and obsessive attachment. The trial of Camilla West began on December 2, 2024, in Duval County Circuit Court. The courtroom was under increased public and media attention, with local stations covering the case as one of the most emotionally charged in recent Jacksonville history. The prosecution, led by Assistant State Attorney Michelle Darrow, began by laying out a comprehensive timeline. Their argument was clear. Tiara Mills had been attempting to extricate herself from a toxic, controlling relationship. She had made efforts to reconnect with old friends, apply for school, and build independence. In response, the defendant, Camilla West, reacted with escalating jealousy and emotional volatility.
That's what it was.
The prosecution contended that this dynamic culminated in a fatal act of violence born of obsession and fear of abandonment. Darrow's strategy focused on Camilla's behavior before and after the night of August 22nd. Forensic pathologists testified that Tiara's death was not accidental or instantaneous. The injuries showed sustained force. Strangulation, they explained, required intent and pressure held over time. One medical examiner told the jury, this was not a momentary lapse. It was prolonged physical action with fatal consequences. Digital analysts were called to demonstrate Camilla's online activity, including incriminating search queries made after Tiara was already deceased. Screenshots of Camilla's browser history were shown to the jury. How to hide a dead body, how long before a body starts to smell, and can vinegar cover decay? These searches, the prosecution argued, were not consistent with panic. They indicated awareness, planning, and concealment. Behavioral experts were brought in to explain Camilla's psychological profile. They described traits consistent with pathological attachment and emotional enmeshment. According to court-appointed psychologist Dr. Lena Wallace, the defendant exhibited a clear dependency on the victim for emotional stability and identity. The fear of rejection was deeply internalized and perceived as existential. This testimony was supported by Camilla's letters from jail, some of which were read aloud in court. One excerpt read, "She kept slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it." Tiara's parents, Shonda and Darius Mills, took the stand on the fourth day of the trial. Shonda, through visible distress, delivered her victim impact statement to the jury. She was a good girl. She never caused trouble. I begged her not to stay there. I told her something felt wrong. I should have come and taken her back. Her voice broke multiple times during her testimony. Darius spoke only once. He looked directly at the defendant and said, "She was our only child. And she's gone." The courtroom was silent. The defense, led by public defender Julian Rowe, offered a different narrative. They argued that Camilla experienced a dissociative episode triggered by a history of emotional instability and childhood trauma. According to the defense, the incident was not premeditated. Rowe stated that Camilla panicked, did not comprehend her actions, and blocked the memory as a defense mechanism. She was emotionally unwell and acting from a place of confusion, not calculation, he told the jury. But on cross-examination, the prosecution dismantled this claim. They pointed out the timeline of searches, the physical cleanup efforts, and the concealment of the body on the balcony. These were not the actions of someone in a fugue state, Darrow argued. This was methodical. She knew Tiara was dead. She knew she had to hide it. And she took steps to do exactly that. Camilla West did not testify in her own defense. Her attorneys advised against it, citing her mental health condition and the risk of cross-examination undermining their argument. In their closing arguments, the prosecution returned to Tiara's own voice. They played the audio file she had recorded on August 17th. The message, retrieved from her iCloud, lasted under 30 seconds. It was quiet, tearful, and final. "She's starting to watch everything I do. If something happens to me, please look here." The courtroom remained still as the final seconds played. Several jurors were seen wiping tears. The prosecution rested its case. On the morning of December 11th, 2024, the jury in State of Florida versus Camilla West returned its verdict, guilty on all counts.
I will look on your iPhone.
Camilla West was convicted of second-degree murder and concealment of human remains in the death of Tiara Mills. The courtroom remained silent as the verdict was read. Camilla showed no visible reaction. Her defense team did not request an immediate appeal but reserved the right to file post-trial motions. At sentencing, held 2 weeks later, Judge Helena Griffin addressed the court. Her remarks, delivered from the bench before a packed gallery, framed the case as one of emotional dependency turned deadly. "This was a preventable tragedy born of possessiveness and emotional control," she said. "You took a life that trusted you. The court recognizes the profound loss suffered by the family of the victim and the irreversible nature of your actions. Camilla West was sentenced to 37 years in the custody of the Florida Department of Corrections. Under Florida law, she would not be eligible for parole until serving at least 30 of those years. With no prior criminal history, and after undergoing a psychological evaluation, she was assigned to a medium security facility in the northern part of the state. Her intake record listed her as non-suicidal but at risk of isolation. Following the conclusion of the trial, Shonda and Darius Mills exited the courthouse for the final time. Outside, accompanied by a few close relatives and advocates from the Victim Services Unit, they released a single white balloon into the overcast Jacksonville sky. The moment, captured by local media, was not followed by a public statement. Instead, they quietly returned home. Tiara's former bedroom was left largely untouched. Her books remained on the shelf. Her desk still held her school planner, open to the week of her death. The application to Florida A&M University, unsigned and complete, was placed inside a memory box by her parents. They declined to speak further about her belongings, stating only that they would preserve the room as she left it. At the Sunrise Palms apartment complex, Unit 3C remained vacant. Management confirmed that the unit was no longer being shown to prospective tenants. While nothing in Florida state law prohibited the re-rental of the unit, property records showed that no new lease had been initiated by the time of the trial. Residents on the third floor continued to express discomfort about the events that had taken place there. A few quietly moved out. The balcony closet where Tiara's body had been discovered was sealed and remodeled. One detail, previously omitted from public reporting, came to light during a secondary crime scene review in late September. During a final forensic sweep, technicians had removed a loose ventilation cover inside the hall closet of apartment 3C. Behind it, folded neatly and taped to the inside wall, was a single sheet of lined paper. It was written in Tiara's handwriting. The note was not dated, but based on other items recovered nearby, investigators believe it had been written sometime in early August, possibly 2 weeks before her death. It contained no accusations. No names. Just a single sentence that investigators would later describe as a quiet plea. This place doesn't feel like home anymore. I'm trying to find my way back. The original note was returned to Tiara's parents. A copy was added to the case file. With sentencing concluded and all appeals waived by the defense as of early 2025, the state of Florida officially closed the case. No additional suspects were ever named. No charges were filed beyond those brought against Camilla West. According to law enforcement records, all physical evidence was logged and archived. The case remains inactive, with no pending action. Today, we're looking into a case that started with a sudden death in a quiet home, and led to charges that stunned an entire town. A man was found unresponsive in his garage. At first, no one knew what to think. But behind closed doors, the truth was far more tangled. 2 siblings were questioned. Their stories raised questions no one was prepared for. What seemed like a tragic moment began to shift into something else entirely. On May 14, 2024, at 5:46 a.m., a 911 call was received from a residential address in Billings, Montana. The caller,
they got black
Linda
folks
Monroe,
there?
reported finding her husband, Gregory Wells, unresponsive in their garage. Monroe, audibly distressed, stated that she had discovered Wells lying face down near the workbench and that he appeared to be injured. Emergency personnel were dispatched immediately. Gregory Wells, 45, was found by paramedics upon arrival already deceased.
He tied it up.
Examination of the body
He's being a
revealed
kid's
a
ass.
traumatic wound to the left temple.
Yeah.
His body was cold to the touch, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. The location of the incident, the garage, showed no immediate signs of forced entry or struggle. No weapons were visible
He
at
being
the
that
body.
bitch or the children. They got
Investigators
tired.
observed that tools were still arranged neatly on the walls and bench, and the floor was free from debris or signs of a fight. Linda Monroe, 42, informed responding officers that she had fallen asleep in the living room while watching television the previous night. She claimed not to have heard any unusual noises and had not noticed anything out of place until the morning when she went into the garage to retrieve a bag of dog food. Officers found her account consistent but incomplete, as she was unable to provide a clear timeline for her own movements between late evening and the discovery of the body.
Bitch, I was
Inside
asleep.
the house were two minors, Travis Monroe, 19, and Haley Monroe, 17, Linda's children from a previous relationship. Both were home at the time of the incident. They were found in their respective bedrooms, reportedly asleep when officers arrived. In adherence to protocol, both were separated and interviewed individually by patrol officers and a detective. Travis Monroe, a first-year student at Miles Community College, was calm and cooperative during questioning. He stated that he had returned from classes the previous afternoon and had gone to sleep around midnight. He claimed not to have heard any disturbances overnight. Haley Monroe, a high school senior at Billings Senior High School, was notably withdrawn during her initial interview. She avoided eye contact, spoke in short responses, and exhibited signs of emotional distress, including shaking and difficulty answering simple questions. Given the suspicious nature of the scene, an undisturbed garage, no sign of forced entry, and the presence of the family inside the home, detectives began canvassing the neighborhood for any external security footage. One neighbor, who lived directly behind the Monroe residence, provided footage from a motion-activated security camera overlooking the alleyway and trash collection area. The video, timestamped at approximately 12:16 a.m., showed an individual resembling Haley Monroe placing an elongated object behind a pair of garbage bins. Officers executed a search of the area depicted in the video and recovered a 12-pound framing hammer partially hidden beneath cardboard and loose refuse.
12 pounds!
The hammer had visible blood staining along the head and upper handle.
Haley!
It was collected, bagged, and sent to the crime lab for immediate forensic analysis. The initial wound analysis from the coroner indicated that the blunt force trauma sustained by Gregory Wells was consistent with the size, weight, and damage profile that a framing hammer of this kind would produce. Crime scene technicians conducted a sweep of the home, focusing on potential sources of trace evidence. No blood was found in the common areas or the bedrooms. However, a preliminary test on clothing worn by Haley revealed a positive result for blood on the sleeve and hem of a gray sweatshirt. The item was collected as evidence. No additional tools or weapons matching the recovered hammer were found in the home's tool storage or garage. At this stage, the case was upgraded from unattended death to active homicide investigation. Both Travis and Haley Monroe were taken into custody for further questioning. Linda Monroe remained at the residence and was advised not to leave the area. She provided officers with consent to search all interior rooms, devices, and outbuildings on the property. Gregory Wells moved into the Monroe residence in Billings, Montana, in August 2016, following his marriage to Linda Monroe. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. At the time, Linda was a single mother raising two children, Travis, then 11, and Haley, age 9. The couple met through mutual acquaintances and married less than a year after beginning their relationship. According to public records, Gregory Wells had a prior conviction for third-degree assault stemming from a 2009 bar altercation in Great Falls, Montana. He served probation and completed a mandated anger management course. There were no other charges on his record, and no formal allegations of domestic violence had been filed with law enforcement before 2021. Despite the lack of official complaints, items recovered from the Monroe home during the homicide investigation painted a more complex portrait of life inside the household. In a desk drawer in Haley Monroe's bedroom, officers found a stack of handwritten notes and journal entries, many dated over the course of the past year. The notes described frequent emotional volatility, verbal aggression, and repeated threats allegedly made by Gregory Wells. Several entries referenced specific incidents where Haley wrote of hiding in her closet or staying awake out of fear. Phrases such as "he waits for mom to leave," "he slammed the door and wouldn't let me out," and "watching the hallway at night" were documented. When questioned about these writings, Linda Monroe acknowledged that her daughter had become more withdrawn in recent months, but said she had assumed it was stress from school or social issues. She admitted to one previous call to 911 in November 2021. In that report, Linda stated that Gregory had pushed her during an argument while intoxicated. Officers responded to the call, but Linda declined to press charges.
I know she did.
The incident was logged but not pursued further. In the interview conducted following Gregory's death, she told detectives he drank a lot. He got cruel when angry. But I never thought he'd hurt the kids. Travis Monroe had returned to the family home in February 2024 after spending 2 semesters at Miles Community College in Miles City, Montana. He informed investigators that he made the decision to come home after increasingly troubling phone conversations with his sister. According to his statement, Haley had stopped participating in family meals, had begun skipping extracurricular activities, and appeared emotionally closed off. She sounded scared, Travis told detectives. I knew something was wrong. I couldn't just sit in a dorm while it got worse. Investigators reviewed school attendance records, counseling logs, and messages retrieved from Haley's phone. Her school records showed a gradual decline in performance beginning in late 2022. A school counselor noted in an internal report that Haley had requested to speak about home issues, but no formal abuse allegation had been made at the time. Text messages exchanged between Haley and a friend in March 2024 included statements such as "he yells even when no one talks," and "I can't breathe when he's around." Linda Monroe stated during her second interview that she had tried to keep things normal and that Gregory's outbursts usually passed quickly. However, when asked directly about her children's relationship with their stepfather, she paused before replying, "They feared him." She did not elaborate. By May 15th, forensic lab results confirmed that the blood found on the recovered framing hammer matched Gregory Wells. Further testing identified blood traces on the cuff and sleeve of a gray sweatshirt worn by Haley the night of the incident. DNA analysis confirmed the source as Gregory's. The clothing was consistent with the item Haley had been seen wearing in the early hours of May 14th, based on the footage obtained from the neighbor's security system. Both Haley and Travis were formally detained pending further questioning. Juvenile services were contacted, and legal guardianship status was reviewed. Linda Monroe was not immediately arrested but was advised of the legal implications of providing any false or misleading information. She consented to additional interviews and allowed investigators access to her phone and laptop. The second phase of the investigation focused on reconstructing family dynamics and identifying any pattern of abuse that might explain the circumstances leading to Gregory Wells' death. Authorities contacted Child Protective Services to request prior involvement records. Preliminary data showed no open cases involving the Monroe family. However, further subpoenas were filed to obtain details of any prior reports or anonymous tips. The second round of interviews with Travis and Haley Monroe took place at the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office on the evening of May 15, 2024. Both siblings had been in custody for approximately 36 hours at that point. They were being held in separate interview rooms, each monitored and accompanied by a legal representative provided by the Public Defender's Office. Investigators approached this round with the intent of clarifying inconsistencies in the initial statements and resolving the timeline between midnight and the discovery of Gregory Wells's body. During his second interview, Travis Monroe changed his account of what had happened on the night of May 13th. Detective David Meeker led the questioning. After a prolonged silence and several brief denials, Travis broke down. His posture changed, and his responses became more detailed and emotionally charged. He stated that around 11:40 p.m., Haley had come into his room visibly upset, shaking, and crying. She told him that Gregory had tried to enter her room and had already been inside before she could lock the door. Travis told the detective, "I told her to lock it. I told her to stay there, but she said he was already in. I didn't know what to do." He claimed that this was not the first such incident. He had been aware of Gregory's behavior for some time, though he had no physical evidence and had not witnessed previous entries into Haley's room. According to Travis, he decided to confront Gregory directly in the garage, where he believed Gregory had gone to drink. Travis said he found Gregory in the garage, visibly intoxicated and aggressive. He was drunk, yelling, saying I had no business telling him anything, Travis stated. The confrontation escalated. When asked by Detective Meeker to describe what happened next, Travis replied, "I grabbed the hammer. He turned toward me. I swung." Meeker asked him how many times he struck Gregory. Travis hesitated, then responded, "Once. Maybe twice." The hammer in question had already been recovered earlier that day and was confirmed by forensics to match the wound pattern and contain traces of Gregory Wells's blood. Haley's earlier movements, captured in alley footage around 12:16 a.m., showed her discarding the hammer. This placed the sequence of events within a narrow window between 11:40 p.m. and shortly after midnight. In her own second interview, conducted by Detective Sarah Nunez, Haley Monroe corroborated Travis's account. She confirmed that she had gone to her brother's room in distress and reported Gregory's intrusion into her bedroom. She described her stepfather as slurring, standing too close, like he was waiting. Haley stated that she did not witness the confrontation in the garage but confirmed hearing loud voices and a crash from that direction. She admitted to disposing of the hammer after seeing Travis come back inside. According to her, he told her only that it was over and handed her the hammer. When asked why she disposed of it, she said, "I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want him to get in trouble. He didn't do it to kill. He did it to stop him." With both siblings providing similar accounts and the forensic evidence corroborating key details, prosecutors moved quickly. Travis Monroe was formally charged with second-degree murder under Montana Code Annotated 45-5-103, alleging that he caused the death of Gregory Wells with knowledge of the risk but without premeditation. Haley Monroe was charged with criminal facilitation, classified under 45-2-302, for aiding in the concealment and disposal of the murder weapon. Both entered not guilty pleas during preliminary arraignment. Their legal representation requested a court-ordered psychological evaluation, citing documented history of trauma and environmental stress within the home. The request was granted by the presiding judge pending further medical review. During the evidence collection process, detectives secured a digital copy of Haley Monroe's cell phone. Among the text messages, app histories, and images, they found multiple Notes app entries that investigators considered relevant to the case. One note, dated April 22nd, read, "He won't stop. I told Mom. She told me to be quiet." This entry became a central element in building the defense's argument of ongoing abuse and neglect. Following the confessions, law enforcement intensified efforts to reconstruct the broader history of abuse in the Monroe household. Investigators submitted formal requests for Child Protective Services records. Preliminary responses indicated that at least 2 anonymous calls had been made to CPS in the previous 3 years, both referencing suspected emotional abuse and possible inappropriate behavior by Gregory Wells. In both instances, the reports were closed as unsubstantiated due to lack of physical evidence and lack of cooperation from household members. The trial of Travis and Haley Monroe commenced on October 8, 2024, at the Yellowstone County District Court in Billings, Montana. Presiding over the proceedings was Judge Evelyn R. Lansing. Both defendants were tried concurrently but separately represented. Travis faced charges of second-degree murder. Haley was charged with criminal facilitation. The prosecution, led by Deputy County Attorney Martin Gleason, framed the case as an avoidable killing. Gleason emphasized the lack of any formal criminal complaints against Gregory Wells, presenting him as a man with a past but no verifiable history of domestic violence in the home. He argued that Travis Monroe acted with intent, not in the heat of the moment. He had time to make a different choice, Gleason told the jury. He chose to confront. He chose to strike. He chose to hide the weapon. Regarding Haley, the prosecution maintained that she had willfully assisted in covering up the crime, citing the disposal of the hammer and withholding of key information during initial questioning. In contrast, the defense, public defenders Angela Price, for Travis, and Jonathan Vega, for Haley, laid out a narrative of sustained abuse, emotional trauma, and institutional failure. Their strategy focused on building a context for the killing, arguing that it was an act of desperation, not premeditation. The defense introduced Haley's journal entries, which detailed months of fear, threats, and emotional isolation. They entered into evidence a series of text messages Haley had sent to a school counselor between January and April 2024, several of which included statements such as, "I can't sleep when he's home," and "Mom says I should ignore him." One critical piece of evidence submitted by the defense was a photograph taken in November 2022, showing dark bruises on Haley's ribcage. According to school records, she had claimed to have fallen down the stairs, but the defense suggested the injury was the result of physical abuse by Gregory Wells. A forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Amelia Renner, testified on behalf of both defendants. She described clinical evaluations showing that both Travis and Haley Monroe exhibited signs of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, likely stemming from prolonged exposure to fear, coercion, and emotional neglect. The jury was presented with extensive documentation. This included photographs from the garage crime scene, digital extractions from Haley's and Travis's phones, screenshots of journal entries and notes from Haley's mobile apps, audio from Linda Monroe's 911 call, video footage from the alleyway, timestamped the night of the incident. Witness testimony included neighbors, Haley's school counselor, and law enforcement officers who had been involved in prior welfare checks. The most emotionally charged testimony came from Linda Monroe herself. Tearful on the stand, she admitted to recognizing signs of something wrong in the home. "I knew something was happening. I just couldn't face it," she said. When asked whether she believed her children had been in danger, she paused and replied, "Yes. I didn't know what to do."
Stupid in love.
The closing arguments on October 18th set the final tone of the trial. The prosecution repeated its stance that a lethal confrontation had been chosen over legal alternatives.
Right.
Gleason concluded Travis Monroe was not under immediate threat. He made a calculated decision. He had a choice. He made it with a hammer. The defense countered by portraying Travis as a protective sibling pushed to his psychological breaking point. "You don't walk away from someone you love being hurt," said Angela Price. "He did what he thought would end it. Not what would hide it. Not what would excuse it. What would stop it." Jury deliberations lasted just under 10 hours, concluding in the late afternoon of October 19th. The verdicts were read in open court shortly before 5 p.m. Travis Monroe was found guilty of second-degree murder. Haley Monroe was found guilty of criminal facilitation. Sentencing for Travis and Haley Monroe took place on November 6, 2024, at the Yellowstone County District Court. The courtroom was filled with legal representatives, media, and members of the local community. Judge Evelyn Arth Lansing presided over the hearing, which lasted more than 3 hours and included statements from both the defense and the prosecution, as well as a formal psychiatric evaluation summary. Travis Monroe was sentenced to 18 years in the Montana State Prison System. Under Montana law, he would be ineligible for parole for the first 12 years of his sentence. The ruling took into account the severity of the offense, the use of a weapon, and the fact that the homicide occurred in a residential setting.
32.
Haley Monroe was sentenced to 10 years, with the possibility of supervised release after 6 years. Her age at the time of the offense, psychological evaluation results, and cooperation during the investigation were considered mitigating factors. In delivering the sentence, Judge Lansing addressed both the circumstances and the systemic gaps revealed by the case. She stated, "This court cannot condone vigilante justice. But it also cannot ignore the failures of those who were supposed to protect you." She acknowledged the complex trauma background but emphasized that lethal action was not an acceptable substitute for lawful resolution. Linda Monroe, mother of both defendants, was not charged with any criminal offense. However, the court referred her to the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services for a family services review. This included evaluation of her previous decisions regarding domestic safety, child protection, and any potential obstruction of intervention services. The results of that review were not made public. Public reaction to the sentencing was immediate and deeply divided. Outside the courthouse, small crowds gathered, some expressing sympathy and others voicing outrage. Handwritten signs ranged from "Justice for Haley and Travis" to "Where was CPS?" and "You don't get to kill your problems." The case sparked heated debate online, in schools, and across local media outlets. Commentators and editorial boards reflected a community torn between understanding and condemnation. Following the sentencing, the Monroe residence in Billings was vacated and listed for sale. By early December 2024, the property had been sold to a private buyer, and all contents were removed under court supervision. Linda Monroe relocated to Missoula, Montana. She declined to speak publicly but was seen attending counseling sessions through a local support center for survivors of domestic abuse. Travis Monroe's legal team filed an appeal of the sentence on November 21, 2024, citing mitigating circumstances that included long-term exposure to verbal and psychological abuse, the mental health status of both siblings, and lack of protective action by state agencies. The Montana Supreme Court accepted the appeal for review in January 2025. A final hearing date had not yet been set at the time of publication. Haley Monroe, who was transferred to a youth correctional facility in Helena, Montana, began trauma-focused therapy under the state's juvenile rehabilitation program. Program staff confirmed her participation in counseling sessions but stated that she declined all media interviews and outside communication requests. She remained under protective classification, with no contact allowed between her and Travis. Travis was assigned to Montana State Prison in Deer Lodge and placed in a unit designated for inmates under protective status due to the nature of the offense and his age. He did not issue a public statement but was reported to be cooperating with facility mental health services. Prison records confirmed he had no major disciplinary actions in the first 60 days of incarceration. As of 2025, the Monroe case remains a subject of continued debate, not only in Billings, Montana, where the events took place, but throughout the state. Though the trial concluded and sentencing was handed down, public discourse has not faded. Instead, it has intensified as new documents and retrospective reports have emerged. Under subpoena, the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services released select portions of Child Protective Services documentation related to the Monroe household. The documents confirmed that 2 anonymous reports had been filed against Gregory Wells, one in March 2020 and another in July 2022. Both reports cited alleged verbal abuse and concerns about inappropriate behavior toward Haley Monroe. In both instances, the cases were closed within 30 days as unsubstantiated, citing insufficient corroborating evidence and lack of cooperation from the family. The release of these records reignited criticism of CPS protocols and underscored long-standing concerns about the threshold for state intervention in domestic cases. Public reaction ranged from frustration to outright anger, particularly among advocacy groups and school officials who had previously flagged warning signs. Haley's high school counselor, who testified during the trial, confirmed she had submitted at least one internal report in 2023, noting that Haley appeared anxious and detached during sessions. However, lacking physical evidence or explicit disclosure, the concern never escalated into an official investigation. The legal community has also begun reassessing the role of trauma-informed defense strategies in cases involving juvenile defendants. Multiple law review articles and academic panels have cited the Monroe case as a benchmark for understanding how psychological trauma influences perceived intent and criminal behavior. A symposium held at the University of Montana in early 2025 featured the case as a focal point, with experts debating the limits of legal accountability in high-stress domestic environments. Travis Monroe, now 20 years old, remains incarcerated at Montana State Prison in Deer Lodge under protective classification. According to prison records, he has maintained a clean behavioral record and continues to receive individual therapy. During sentencing in 2024, Travis submitted a handwritten letter to the court, which has since been archived in the official case file. The letter read in part, "I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just didn't want to bury my sister." Haley Monroe, currently 18, remains in the custody of the Montana Department of Corrections Youth Services Division. She continues to participate in trauma counseling and educational programming. Staff report she has shown consistent engagement but continues to decline media interviews. She remains under a no-contact order with her brother. Prosecutors confirmed in early 2025 that they would not be reopening any investigations against Linda Monroe. While concerns had been raised during the trial about her inaction and prior knowledge of household conditions, there was insufficient legal basis for criminal charges. However, her case remains under internal review within the state's Family Services framework. The hammer used in the killing of Gregory Wells remains sealed in evidence storage at the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office. It is categorized as a retained physical exhibit and is not expected to be released or destroyed pending resolution of the appellate review of Travis Monroe's sentence.
"22-year-old community college student Jasmine Pace had plans to spend Thanksgiving 2022 with her family. To her mother's surprise, she sent a text message last minute canceling those plans. On Jasmine's Facebook account, there was a new post. It read, "Enjoying Thanksgiving with my baby." Except the photo accompanying the post was not from Thanksgiving. In this photo, Jasmine's distinctive tattoos were missing. It had to have been taken months earlier. Concern turned to panic as her family realized the implications. No one knew where Jasmine was, and someone was online pretending to be her. Hi there, I'm Kevin, and welcome to Just Thought Lounge. Today's case is as gruesome as it is heartbreaking. It's one of those stories that stays with you long after it's over. There's a lot to digest here, so let's take a look. The night before Thanksgiving 2022, Jasmine Pace left her mother's home in Chattanooga, Tennessee at just before 11:30 p.m. She drove her white Chevy Equinox. The next day, Katrina Pace received a message from her daughter's phone. She planned to stay at the home of her friend Emma for the rest of the week, the text read. Jasmine had recently lost her grandmother to cancer, so when she opted out of the family gathering, it didn't immediately raise alarm bells. She had occasionally chosen to be out of contact for brief periods as she worked through her grief. That abruptly changed, however, following a new post on Jasmine's Facebook page. "Enjoying Thanksgiving with my baby," it read. At first, what struck Katrina about the post was the revealing outfit her daughter wore. It was not characteristic of Jasmine to post such a revealing photo of herself online. It was another aspect of the image that sparked waves of panic for Jasmine's father, Travis Pace. Jasmine's many tattoos formed a kind of timeline, each obtained on a different date, months apart. In this image, Jasmine's extensive tattoos on her upper right arm were missing. This post was not what it claimed to be. Katrina spoke with Jasmine's friend Emma and confirmed what she had already suspected by that time. Jasmine was not with her family for the week, as the text had claimed. Several other friends and family members had received messages, ostensibly from Jasmine as well, though no one had spoken with her directly. In each instance, the messages stated that the 22-year-old wished to be alone. The family began immediately to search for her. Jasmine's Chevy SUV was equipped with a GPS feature called My Chevy. The My Chevy app allowed her mother to track the location of the vehicle. It was found parked outside of a building of condominiums off of Mountain Creek Road in Chattanooga. By the time the vehicle was discovered, it was already 8:30 p.m. on November 26th, 4 days after Jasmine had last been seen, leaving her mother's late on the 22nd. As far as the family was aware, Jasmine did not know anyone at the Signal View condos where the Equinox was parked. When they accessed the vehicle, the driver's seat had been pushed back. It seemed that someone much taller than Jasmine's petite 5'2" stature had last been behind the wheel. A call was placed to 911 to report her disappearance. Chattanooga police arrived and took a report detailing what the family had discovered.
We want her home and we want her safe.
Bailey Putman is doing anything she can to try to bring her childhood friend home. Jasmine Pace hasn't been seen since November 22nd. Chattanooga police are investigating the case as a missing person.
Her mom has not an ounce of sleep. I don't think she is 8.
Jasmine was last seen here on surveillance video leaving her mom's house. They believe she was trying to leave town to grieve a recent death in the family, but they knew something went wrong when she didn't show up to Thanksgiving dinner.
And that is so very unlike her. There's not a day that they don't hear from Jasmine, let alone an hour.
Katrina also contacted the family's cell phone provider. Jasmine was on their family plan, which granted her mother access to her phone records. There had been no calls placed from the phone for days. With the call log in hand, the frantic mother began calling every number listed. She did so in the presence of police.
They look just like
there was one number that Jasmine had connected with for over an hour on the night of the 22nd. When Katrina tried this number, the phone connected to a young man that Jasmine had met on the dating app Bumble. Jason Chen was a computer science major at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. The two had been dating for several months, though the relationship had not been serious enough to warrant an introduction to her parents. Neither Katrina nor Travis had met Jason. The computer science student was informed that Jasmine was missing. Had he heard from her? Not for days, he said, and when they had last spoken, it had only been for a few minutes. Katrina knew this to be a blatant lie.
Because they had that hour call.
I said that he had talked to her for a few minutes Monday, and she was with me at the bank. He talked to her for 71 minutes. He would remember that. He talked to her for over an hour, and he just lied.
Jason's lack of concern was another red flag. Katrina pleaded with officers to take further steps to investigate, but they did very little. Jasmine was an adult, and there were no clear signs at that point in time of foul play. A report was written and contact information exchanged before they left the frustrated parents on their own once more. So Katrina and Travis took matters into their own hands. They began knocking on every door at the condominium complex. No one had seen Jasmine. A security guard agreed to share the camera footage of the white Chevy entering the parking lot. With the timestamps provided on the My Chevy app, they narrowed in on the footage. On November 23rd, just past 8:30 p.m., the SUV drove into the lot and in the direction of the location where it was later found parked. The driver could not be identified. Unnoticed on Katrina's cell phone until this time was one final text message that had been sent to her from Jasmine in the early morning hours of November 23rd. There was no message, just a pin-dropped location showing where her device was at that time. It was received at 2:18 a.m. Her daughter had never sent a message like this to her before, certainly not in the middle of the night. The day after their concerns were dismissed by police at the condos, the family promptly went to the location from the message, the apartments at 110 Tremont Street. Again, the desperate parents knocked on every door. All but one, apartment 210, answered or was accounted for. Neighbors recounted that they had heard a loud disturbance from the direction of that unit in the early hours of November 23rd, around 2:15 a.m. Recollections vary, but somehow, Katrina and Travis made their way inside apartment 210. A notebook inside the door revealed the name of its occupant, Jason Chen. It was a open concept with the kitchen only feet from the couch. A hallway led to the only bedroom. There was one bathroom and a laundry unit stacked inside of a closet. Most of the apartment was visible immediately upon walking in. On the kitchen counter sat a small travel bag. It belonged to Jasmine. Cleaning supplies sat out. In the drawer of a desk, Travis discovered his daughter's driver's license along with her credit cards. These he pulled out and left sitting in plain view. Chattanooga police were once again called out. Officers spoke with Katrina once more. They also spoke with the neighbors. Then they left. Believing that law enforcement was proving useless to them once more, Katrina re-entered the apartment multiple times over the next few hours. She took notebooks and electronics, multiple cell phones, a camera, and an iPad, anything that she thought could give an indication of her daughter's location. The parents also searched through the dumpsters outside of the building. It was close to midnight
They was looking
before
for
the
their
Chattanooga
baby.
PD returned to 110 Tremont with a search warrant and began formally to commence their search. During the initial walkthrough, investigators noted what appeared to be bloody stains on the hardwood floor. In the living room, absorbed by the grouting in the bathroom, on the bedroom carpet. Spatter was identified on the doors in the bathroom wall. The abundance of cleaning supplies was also extremely concerning. Trash bags had been emptied. Police checking the dumpsters found 2 white sneakers and a pair of blue trousers. These items were collected. Back inside the unit, they spotted fragments of broken glass in the living room. Indications of a violent incident were accumulating. Furniture appeared to have been moved around. In the bedroom, there were marks on the carpet, which indicated where furniture had sat for some time and had been subsequently moved to other parts of the room. The rearrangement of the room, it seems, was likely done in an attempt to cover a large stain that was spotted underneath the bed. On top of the bed sat a kitchen knife.
Man, not all this, Mr. Chan.
In virtually every room, investigators identified stains that could be blood. The crime scene unit was called in to spray down areas of the apartment with Blue Star, the forensic agent used to identify areas where blood may have been cleaned up or invisible to the naked eye. The hallway lit up. The case of Jasmine Pace's disappearance became a homicide.
Yeah.
Detectives obtained security camera footage from the apartment building and the surrounding area. They were able to piece together a timeline of Jason Chen's movements with the aim of hopefully gaining an understanding of where they might find Jasmine Pace. Investigators could be certain that she had arrived at 110 Tremont before midnight on the 22nd. Her Chevy Equinox was captured taking a right turn into the building parking lot. The Chevy was also captured leaving. Indeed, it could be tracked to the condominium buildings from Jason's apartment building. At about 8:30 p.m. the day after Jasmine arrived, a figure in a light-colored hoodie was captured driving it from the building towards the Signal View condos. A dark-colored Prius, likely a hired taxi, collected that driver from the condos and dropped them off in front of Jason's building. A ring camera from the apartment door directly beside an exit door to the parking lot captured Jason Chen leaving the building on multiple occasions on the 23rd, including at 8:27 p.m., 3 minutes before the driver in the light hoodie took Jasmine's SUV to the Signal View condos and left it there. There were a few additional trips made by Jason Chen over the Thanksgiving holiday that piqued the interest of investigators. The first was a morning trip to Walmart, alone, where he purchased, amongst other things, Band-Aids, peroxide, and cleaning products. Captured using the self-checkout, he ran a few of the more expensive items through as asparagus. The overhead Walmart camera offered a clear view of Jason's pair of white sneakers. These shoes were thought to be the same pair found discarded outside of the apartment dumpsters. On the evening of the same day, Jason stopped at a Walgreens and purchased a package of paper towels. Sometime between his trip to Walmart that morning and the time he left the blood-stained and hastily cleaned apartment, he must have taken Jasmine from the building, discarding items of his clothing as part of an attempt to cover his tracks. As investigators tracked the computer science student on various footage throughout Chattanooga, they were aided by his notable white hoodie, a bright and distinct article of clothing that could be identified even in dark and sometimes fuzzy surveillance video. At almost 6 p.m. on the 23rd, the white hoodie emerged from the building once more. This time, the figure was struggling
crying on my goddamn phone.
The front door of the building towards the parking lot. Moments later, Jason's black Toyota Camry was captured leaving. On November 29th, 1 week after Jasmine was last seen, Jason Chen was located at his parents' home in Nolensville. Arresting officers noticed lacerations on Jason's right hand and feet, indicative of a violent struggle.
He's gonna pat you down. He's gonna place in handcuffs. The officer gonna arrest you. Just call us and you go to the back of the car. So Okay, that's good.
Okay, so you said it was a search warrant.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, it's for search warrant for your person. So we're Knoxville Police Department. We're going to be today you in the Flashman search warrant. We're assisting Channel 2.
Okay, and is there any like calls or anything?
They're going to explain. That's it. Okay. Yeah. We're going to let them do that. But I don't want to speak for them. Yeah, we don't want to let you misinform you of anything. So they'll tell you all that when we get down there. So just take it with them. They're the lead on this. We'll let them explain it because we don't want to pile on information. We'll let them one time it all. Okay. All right. So if you will, just face away from me.
A search warrant was obtained for the house. In the room used by Jason, a black backpack and a collection of handwritten notes were confiscated. Some of these notes appear to have been Jason trying to get his story straight. One stated that he had last seen her on November 19th. They had spoken on the 22nd. He wrote that she had a history of running away and had a restraining order against an ex. It seemed that Jason had planned for his inevitable interview with police by recording that Jasmine had also been homeless. He wrote that he thought her mother was an alcoholic, all suggestive of her being an unpredictable runaway. In his backpack, inside of a glasses case, detectives found a SIM card. It was for Jasmine's device. They also obtained Jason's phone and downloaded the data. On Jason's cell phone, detectives found a picture of Jasmine standing in his bathroom, taken on the night of her disappearance. There were multiple screenshots saved as well of text messages he had gotten from Jasmine, but the actual texts themselves were missing. On the morning after she had likely been killed, he sent her a photo along with a note, "Slept like a baby." Later that day, he asked, "Hey, are we still good for dinner tonight?" The photo's metadata revealed it was taken 2 years prior. From Jasmine's phone data, detectives could see that her device had taken the trip to Walmart along with Jason that morning, though he was shown on camera driving and shopping alone. Finally, the phone's movements revealed where he had traveled after loading the large suitcase into his Camry. He had taken a drive to Suck Creek Road. The road ran parallel to the bank of a river. On Thursday, December 1st, walking along the bank of the river, investigators spotted an item. It was what they were, unfortunately, expecting to find: Jason Chen's large suitcase. Inside the suitcase, they found 98-pound Jasmine Pace. She was wrapped in 3 trash bags and had been shackled with 2 handcuffs. Her right arm was cuffed to her right ankle, and her left ankle was linked to her right elbow. They were not law enforcement-style handcuffs. These were less substantial. The chain of one was broken. An autopsy determined that Jasmine had been stabbed no less than 60 times. Her wounds were centered in one area of her body, primarily the upper left side. The tip of a knife was removed from her chest. Jasmine was a devoted aunt to 2 nieces and godmother to a little boy named Waylon. According to her older sister Gabby, Jasmine wanted nothing more than to have children of her own and always talked about what kind of mother she would be. She was also an animal lover and cherished her 4 cats. To those closest to her, the fun and sweet 22-year-old had always been known as Jazzy. Fiercely protective of her family and friends, Jasmine is remembered as someone who was always there for a friend in need, to share her love and support.
There was a moment when you're with her, you realized how clever, how smart, how brilliant she was.
Knowing how many lives that she touched and them spreading the word on my sister, I think it also touched other people's hearts that have probably gone through a situation like this.
I've known her my entire life, and I've never seen her burn a bridge or have ends with someone badly.
She just always made it a point to know, for you to know that she was thinking of you and that she loved you. She was fierce over her family. She was fierce over her friends.
In December 2022, a judge set Jason Chen's bond at $5 million. As the gruesome nature of the murder reached the news media, many expressed disgust that Jason was offered a bond at all. By this stage, a complete timeline had been pieced together, including evidence that showed Jason had used Jasmine's phone and SIM card to access her banking information her social media accounts, and to post fake updates after the murder. To a woman he had connected with on Tinder, he messaged, "I guess we're dating now," as Jasmine allegedly still lied dead in his bedroom. To friends later that night, he arranged to play Call of Duty online. He just needed to finish cleaning up his apartment, apparently. It was difficult to imagine what defense, if any, Jason Chen's legal team would put forward when the case came to trial, which it did in January 2025. In a shocking development on day one, defense attorney Josh Wise did not fight for his client's innocence. In opening statements, he told the jury Jason Chen killed Jasmine Pace, but that he didn't do it with premeditation. This is a case of voluntary manslaughter. Although the state was not pursuing the death penalty, Jason faced a life sentence without the possibility of parole if found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. His best defense was to argue a lesser charge applied.
This is the suitcase in which Jason Chen stuffed the 98-pound body of Jasmine Pace. That's where I'm going to begin this story. Except, I want you to remember that as you hear evidence in the next week, that this is not a story like the one that you read in a novel where you have to imagine the appearances of characters. The evidence that you will hear in this case is very real. The evidence will not require that you use your imagination. Jasmine Pace was very real. And Jason Chen really killed her.
For the crime to be deemed voluntary manslaughter, the defense needed to convince the jury that Jason had killed Jasmine in a fit of passion, that he had been provoked somehow into reacting in an irrational way, which led to her death. The theory they posited was that the couple were drinking wine at his apartment late into the night. When Jasmine entered the kitchen to get another bottle, she heard the distinct sound of notifications from the Tinder dating app. These rang out repeatedly from her boyfriend's phone. Angered by this, she began to argue with him. The claim was that Jasmine attacked Jason with a broken wine glass. Having used a kitchen knife to remove the seal from the previous wine bottle in the bedroom, he had left it sitting on the bedside table. It was this knife that Jason instinctively reached for when he was attacked. Wise explained away the shackles found on Jasmine's body by arguing that Jason had panicked after the stabbing. He applied the handcuffs in order to make Jasmine fit inside of the bags in the suitcase. The timeline of the murder and attempted cover-up was detailed extensively through videos, Jason and Jasmine's cell phone data, as well as testimony from neighbors in the apartment building. Courtney Brewer reported hearing an altercation take place after 2 a.m.
On the night of November the 22nd and early hours of November the 23rd, was there an incident that you can recall?
Yes, I was woken up in the middle of the night by a loud scream.
Can you kind of take us, and you can go slowly through the events that woke you up and everything that you heard from that point until you didn't hear it?
There was a scream that startled me out of my sleep while I checked my phone to see the time because I was going to call 911. It was around 2 a.m. There was a voice that was screaming words. The words I couldn't understand fully.
Was it a male voice or female?
A female voice. And then there sounded, assuming that the apartment above mine is laid out the same as mine, there sounded like chasing, a lot of footsteps going across towards the front door.
One person's footsteps or two?
It sounded like multiple.
You said towards the front door. Was it towards the front door or towards the bedroom?
Towards the front door because I was in the bedroom when I heard it.
You had said that you heard a scream. Can you describe the scream?
Distressed. Not quite angry. Emphatic.
Recreating a possible scenario for the murder itself was heavily dependent upon the physical evidence left at the crime scene. This is where the case became messy. Not only had Jason used various types of cleaning agents inside the apartment and disposed of many items, including the broken knife, the scene had also been accessed and searched by Katrina Pace, now Katrina Bean, multiple times. Questions were raised over potential contamination of the crime scene.
Why would the apartments look different after the police went in there than when they were in there? Who changed it?
The defense called its own crime scene expert to walk through the many changes that were visible at the scene between the first time police were called out to the point in time that it was photographed and processed. Furniture had been moved. Items had been taken. They questioned whether evidence could have been planted. Travis Pace testified that he did not recall seeing a knife on the bed when he first entered with his ex-wife to search for his daughter.
And then this past Monday, you were in this room when you saw Katrina Pace testify on that stand, right? Were any of those statements true?
Do we remember it differently?
You heard Katrina testify that she went back into the apartment multiple times after that night, or after that morning?
I heard that.
Were you with her those times?
I was there.
Do you know what she did in the apartment during those times? Your ex-wife, Katrina Pace, does she have a reputation for being honest? Mr. Pace, in your opinion, does Katrina Pace, is she an honest person?
I don't have an opinion.
Yeah, madam.
If the scene itself was considered suspect, the conclusions made by the medical examiner were not, and they pointed to a premeditated attack. Dr. Stephen Cogswell, the Hamilton County medical examiner, concluded that based on the location of the wounds, Jasmine had been in the fetal position while she was attacked. The shackles that she was found wearing had therefore likely been applied when she was still alive.
If someone were stabbing a person 60 times, we would expect them to try to get away. But what if they can't? What if they can't because their right hand is chained to their right leg, their left leg chained to their right elbow? Makes it difficult to run. Makes it difficult to do anything. Dr. Cogswell told you that she was stabbed in the fetal position 60 times. We'd also expect that if she's being attacked on the right side of her body, that she might try to defend herself with both hands. There should be injuries on both hands. Instead, what we have are injuries to the left hand, no significant injuries to the right hand. That's consistent with her being in the fetal position with a hand unable to move on the ground. It's consistent